Hello, everybody. My name's Jim, and this episode of Bookish Discoveries is about annotating. It's something that I have tried to do, and maybe at the end of this video, some people in the comments can have suggestions for me because I feel like I've exhausted everything, and I just haven't really found that one method that I like. I tend to remember things anyway. If I read it, I remember it. If I see some reviews, that also helps me kind of recollect what I've read. But there are some times when I'm reviewing a book where I wish that I could just turn back to that page and see something that I've either tagged or highlighted and actually speak on it in a way that's not like, ooh, I wish I could remember this line, but there's 600 pages in this book and I really don't feel like searching through them, sort of thing. So I kind of give like a vague, paraphrased explanation of what the sentence that I'm trying to think of is about. But here I'm going to go through all of the things that I've tried. First, I'm going to talk about the Sharpie highlighters. This was probably the biggest mistake I could have made. I used Unfollow as an example, the memoir by Megan Phelps Roper, to try the different highlighters and see what worked. And these highlight extremely dark. So if you're going to use the Sharpie highlighters, maybe do it in some other way instead of highlighting the text, because they definitely bleed through the page. They show up on the back, and it really is just a mess unless you're using yellow, which I've found that yellow is pretty much the typical highlighter color that works in pretty much all cases, just because it isn't dark and you can still kind of see where that highlight is. But in a lot of cases, people use annotations for different things. Like you might want to annotate a character's introduction with yellow, but then with a very heavy plot point, you want to annotate that in green or in blue or something so that it stands out, that you can find it later. So the fact that a yellow Sharpie works is fine, but you can't really have that much diversity if you want to highlight different things and have that color label. The next highlighters that I tried to use was a 10-pack of Mildliner highlighters. These are the ones that I feel worked best. So the pack of 10 contains a gray, a green, a red, a darker blue, and a purple that I would probably not recommend using on books. But it seems that, and I need to try this again, but the yellow, the orange, the pink, and possibly the lighter kind of pastel-y green work best on books. So there was a better opportunity for diversifying some of the things that I highlighted. And if I ever do decide to go back and annotate, I think I'm going to try these again. But I'm still just so afraid to use anything on a book that I have because I don't want to like soil it. You know what I mean? I don't want to mess things up. I don't want to assume that, the pink is going to work on one page and then it won't on the other. I tried also using these on Don't Cry For Me because that book, the pages are a little thinner and the pages tend to soak in ink a lot more than maybe other books with thicker pages. So I tried it on that and they seem to be okay. Again, the yellow is the best, but if I'm going to use highlighters, I'm going to need to diversify the colors so that I can pinpoint exactly what everything means. The final set of highlighters that I used are DiverseBee highlighters. This is a highlighter that I asked one of my friends who has Bible studies, and she is super creative. She goes into her Bible and she likes to draw on it and highlight passages and things like that. If you know how a Bible is, those pages are super thin, and sometimes they are so thin that you can even see the text on the other side. So these highlighters obviously do not bleed through, but they have a crayon consistency. They're not as rough when you place it on. It's like a gel crayon, but it still has that waxy residue behind. So I found that I still needed to kind of scratch my thumb over the highlighter so that it would show up a bit more smoothly. And even then, I couldn't really get that straight, solid line that just makes everything look so aesthetically pleasing. I wasn't able to do that with these. It was a little bit rougher. So maybe if I were to practice with these a bit more, they would be the best option, but I'm still leaning toward, if I do decide to go back into annotating, I'm still leaning toward the Mildliner highlighters on the lighter end, the more pastel end with the yellow, the orange, the pink, and the Easter kind of pastel green. So moving on to actually writing down and taking notes. This is something that I never did in high school, but I thought, you know what, if the highlighters weren't going to work, then maybe this would work. I want to start with the post-it tabs. These were great at picking out pages that featured things that I wanted to remember. It was a good idea, but I didn't really like how the tabs stuck out. And for each of the tabs, I wrote something down, but it could possibly be that I wouldn't necessarily have to write anything. If I have the post-it tab on a page, I could just skim through that page and I'll probably be able to find the line that I was referencing, especially if I apply the tab next to the line that contains the sentence that I want to remember. So again, if I were to do this again, I would probably utilize the post-it tabs. Unfortunately, I didn't bring them with me when I moved, so they're stuck at my parents' house. They're in their drawer. They're probably using them for other things. But I do feel that the post-it tabs are the things that work best for me, because I tried post-it notes. I tried lined post-it notes because I felt some need to actually take notes and have more space to write things down, but I don't think that that's necessary. I wanted to try one thing where that I had lined post-it notes that are kind of long. They're a little bit more like index cards, and I would place them either at the front or the back of a chapter so that I could summarize it, write it down and summarize it just in case I wanted to talk about that book in a video. But that really didn't work for me, and I just ended up using my lined post-its for writing down recipes. So at least I found a use for them. They're not just sitting in a drawer not being used like the Sharpie highlighters. I ended up donating those to a teacher who needed some materials in her classroom, so at least they went to a good place. Teachers are always in need of materials. They have to purchase this stuff on their own with their own money, so it's always nice to give to them if there's something that you aren't going to use. And the last thing that I tried was just a full-on classic notebook. This was actually the first thing that I used to annotate with, and it was fine. I do like taking notes because I'm writing my own novel. I do like jotting down things in my notebook, especially if I don't have access to a computer. Like if I'm on vacation and I didn't really bring my laptop, I do take my notebook with me so that there's something there just in case I get an idea and I need to write something down. But as far as annotating, the notebook is just a little bit too clunky for me. I did take a lot of notes with some of the first books that I read, and it was fine. It was okay, but I also tried using a computer like a Google Doc to take notes as well, but that was more or less the same. I use black gel pens to write, but I am not going to write anything in the book itself. I don't know what it is. I know some people do it. My friend who I talked about earlier, who does Bible studies and suggested the DiverseBee highlighters, she writes everything. She takes so many notes, and like that is some level of bravery that I just do not have. But all in all, in conclusion, I think if I were to continue to use highlighters, I would certainly use the lighter colored Mildliner highlighters. And if I were to use post-its, I would use the post-it tabs. I probably wouldn't write on those because there isn't a lot of space, but I don't think that based on my memory, I don't really need to have that much space to write. I would also possibly push the post-it tabs a little further into the page so that they weren't sticking out so much. But yeah, I think that moving forward, if I am to do this, and if you want to annotate yourself, those are the things that I suggest you use, just in case you're like me and you're worried about ruining a book by highlighting it and adding post-its to it. The only thing I will say about the post-its is, be careful about where you place the sticky part. Don't get super sticky post-its because that has a tendency to lift up the text if you put it on top. I think that there are transparent tabs where you can still read through the transparency and see the text underneath. So if you are able to get those, then definitely get those. But yeah, be careful with that glue because if you ever decide to take the tab off, there is a chance that depending on how sticky the glue is, it could lift the ink off of the book itself. But yeah, that's it for annotating. I will let you guys know if I ever get into annotating again. Right now, I'm cautious. I need to practice a little bit more. Maybe use the highlighters on a book that I love that I know that I'm not going to give away. Just find a blank page and test the highlighters out again just to make sure that they actually work the way that I'm saying they work. But otherwise, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Be sure to leave a like. I've been Jim. You've been great. Happy reading and happy annotating.